All right, so first of all, I'd like to congratulate you because today you can learn Kotlin. Now, Kotlin is the better, faster, prettier, better looking, easier to read version of Java. And it works with everything that Java already has because it was built on top of Java. Now, you don't need to hear from me, but the guys that built Kotlin or that developed Kotlin are the people from IntelliJ who have one of the most popular code editors or IDEs. So it's the guys that have been working with code all their lives that built this. And in order for you, what we're going to cover today, you're not going to need to install anything. You could do this in your phone if you really wanted to, if you didn't have a laptop, because all you have to do is you just Google Kotlin compiler, and there you go. It's going to be the page that we're at right now. Cool. So today we're going to cover variables and constants. We're going to cover basic data types, strings, if-else expressions, and when expressions. And at the end of that, as a low bonus, we're going to actually do a Kotlin project, right? It's going to be a little calculator app. So that's going to be very nice. And so yeah, we'll get started with that. It shouldn't take more than a few minutes. And again, I don't mean to rush through this. I assume that even if you don't have a lot of programming experience, you will be able to follow with this. But of course, if you have any questions, anything you want clarity on, please leave it on the comments, shoot me a message, join my Discord, and we can talk about that later on. So first of all, we're going to go with variables and constants, right? So one of the things that's pretty cool about Kotlin is the way, well, like you said, even if you did this on the IDE, all you need to do is start your main function. Now, there are two main things when it comes to variables in Kotlin, right? You're going to have, let's say, for example, the way we instantiate is just var, or it's going to be val. So let's say we have our variable age, and we set that to 25, right? So that's just a number, and we want to print that, right? We want to print age. So just like that, it was very easy to declare. Now, let's say we want to change the value of that. So we instantiated it here and change it here. Cool. So now we have 67, right? Because we changed it. But what if the other way that you can instantiate variables is, well, rather than it being a mutable variable or something you can change, you can make it a constant. So here we have value age. And then here we have it at 25. Again, we're just going to run that. Same thing, nothing crazy about that. But if we did decide to change it here, change the assignment of it, we're going to get an error, right? Because vals can be, they can be reassigned here. Once you started this, it has to remain with that value. Nothing else along the, anything else you do in the program, you won't be able to change it. You'd have to set this to var for that to work. So that's one of the main nuances that Kotlin has. And yeah, so that's just like that. We covered variables and constants. Cool. So now we're going to go over some quick data types in Kotlin, right? So let's go over those real quick. So let's say, I know you saw earlier we had an integer and, we weren't specific about it. It kind of just was able to figure out that we're referring to integer, right? And just to prove that, we can do var, again, age equals to 12, and we could do var, time equals to 68. So we could print age plus time, and we get 100 here, right? So it's able to perform math functions because, again, even though we're not specifying, it's able to figure out that we're referring to numbers, right? But what if we wanted, what do we want to be exact about it? Well, the only thing we have to do is add a colon, age int, and there you go. That's how you would specify. So if you want to do something with decimal values like floats or doubles, same thing, var time, and you could do either float or if you want to do double, then you would just do double. So we run that, and here's just giving a warning that we're going to use it, but that's pretty much how you specify the kind of data type that you want to use. And of course, one last one. Would be Boolean values. So yeah, just lowercase true. So those are the basic data types in Kotlin again. And like I said, what's very neat is you can write it very concisely, simply with a colon and then, you know, the capital starting letter for the variable type, and that's how you do it. So let's talk a little bit about strings in Kotlin. So for Kotlin, let's say you have, you know, you want to write down the variable for a name, right? So that would just be we run that. So again, because of the quotes, we don't have to specify that it's a string, but again, it would be, I guess, more proper or appropriate to do so. And you have that. Now, let's say you want to create something. Let's say you want to print out part of the string with that variable. So we want to print, hello, my name is Hector. Well, we could do it two ways. We could say, hello, my name is Hector. And that'll print just that. But here we're actually writing the string, right? If we want to use the variable in Kotlin, all you'd have to do is $, and then the variable name. And you'd get the same result. And this would work for any variable actually. So if we had another one, we could also do it like that. So all you have to do in Kotlin in order to dereference strings within a little string that you're printing is just you just have to include the $, right? And then same thing if you want to create a new string. So let's say we want to create a greeting, and we want to put this into a whole, you know, into its own variable. We could say it like that too. So yeah, just like that, we're able to, again, use that dereferencing for creating a new value on here. And that's pretty much how you control or instantiate strings in Kotlin. So now we're going to move on to if-else expressions in Kotlin. So we're going to move on to if-else statements, and this is going to be a pretty core concept for any programming language that you work with, right? Also known as branches. This is pretty much where you start writing out the logic of, you know, decision making within the program, within the script that you start writing, right? So let's start with something like score. We're gonna decide if a certain score number dictates that, you know, dictates that either you won or lost the game. So we're gonna start with val score equals 44. So that's the current score. We want to see if, you know, the user, whatever, won. So if the number is greater than, let's say, 56, then inside of here we write the logic of what happens. If it's greater than 56, then we're going to print winner. And then the other condition is we're going to print loser. So again, this is a very simple if else expression. It's just gonna check the score. It's just gonna check the score. If the score is greater than 56, we declare a winner. If the score is less than 56, or really any other number that's not greater than 56, it's gonna print out loser. So let's run that real quick. All right, so our score was 44. 44 is not greater than 56. It printed out loser. So let's say, what happens if we do 58? All right, so 58 is greater than 56. And I think this is a very neat and concise way to write this out. I think for the most part, if else statements are pretty straightforward in most programming languages. But again, I just, it goes along with everything else. So another one that we could do is what's called an expression, right? And that's going to be very similar to an if else statement. So when expressions are a little bit of a more fine-tuned version of an if-else statements, right? So where an if-else statement checks for certain conditions, a when expression is kind of written out to point out what happens under certain conditions when they're met. And also, while it's very similar to an if-else statements, I think this is actually the writing for it can be a little more straightforward if you have multiple outcomes. So an if-else statement is really good if you have if you have 2 or 3 possible outcomes. But I think anything above that, it starts getting kind of messy because you have if, else if, else if, else if, else if, else, and you can always be forgetting the else at the end, and that's just annoying to deal with. But when you have a when expression, you have a very, I would say, pretty looking block of code that shows you all the different scenarios that can happen with specific conditions. So we're going to get into that. So let's say we have something like we want to mark the days of the week. So, let's say for Monday, we set that equal to 1, or that's day 1. Tuesday, that's day 2. Wednesday, that's day 3. So let's say we have our day, and we have our variable day. We're going to set the 2, right? That's Tuesday. Assuming you start your week on Monday, right? So our variable day is equal to 2. Cool. So we're going to write for this. So we want to set our day name, right? So now we have our variable day name, and that's going to be equal to when our day. So this is where we start writing out the logic. If day is equal to 1, then we want that to be Monday. If day is equal to 2, we want that to be Tuesday, right? So when day is 1, then that's going to be Monday. When day is 2, it's going to be Tuesday. Day is 3, it's going to be Wednesday. All right, so we have our day equal to 2. So the day name is equal to when day is 1, Monday, day is 2, Tuesday, and so on. And we could do that for the rest of them, but we don't need to right now. So I believe we need an else at the end. Yes, let's say it's somebody that has a 3-day work week. Cool, so the day is Tuesday, right? Again, the logic is we check for what the value of the day variable is. In this case, it's 2. And depending on what is the scenario that fits in there, that's what day name is set to, right? So we could say something like 1. Let's call this day number to be more clear. So when day number is equal to 1, day name is going to be set to Monday. And then we have the last scenario that anything else that doesn't fit this criteria is just going to be set to vacation day. So let's say 5, right? Vacation day. So again, this is what I was saying, that it's a little bit more concise. I know it might not be super intuitive. It might not be super intuitive if you haven't used this arrow before, which again, it's just the dash and the, greater than sign. But I think reading it in just by plain looking at it, it becomes very clear that these are all the available options, and each one of those options just takes one single line. But anyway, we're going to move on to our last part. We covered all of these where we at when expressions. So now we're going to be able to move on to making our quick Kotlin project, which is going to be a calculator. All right, so for this part, we're actually going to do it in IntelliJ. And again, you can download this IDE here at jetbrains.com. There's a community edition, it's completely free, but we do want to use our command line for this because we want to ask the user for input, and then we want to do the mathematical operation for it, right? So again, first we want to build out our prompts just to have a clear, just to have a clear idea of how we're building this out. And I think if it even helps you, something that helps me is to first write out in comments what our program's going to do, right? So first, ask user for one number. Then we're going to ask user for second number. Then we're going to ask user for mathematical symbol. So that's just if we want plus, minus, divide, all that stuff. All right, cool. So let's do that. So here we're just going to say print line, enter first number. Cool. We can do the same here. Print line, enter second number. And then here we want to specify with the user what we want to do. Enter, we're going to say plus or minus or divide or star. Cool. So this is, we know just based on this where our logic's gonna go, and just play around. Let's run that real quick. So cool, we see here everything running. That's perfect. All right, so now we have this written out. We want to read in our variables from the command line. We want the user to type in what they're gonna add, subtract, or whatever. So we're just gonna set that to val number 1. And the way you read in commands in Kotlin is just going to be read. It's going to be read line or null. So that meaning that take the input from the user during the arguments that are submitted. Otherwise, just mark it as a null value. And this can be set to null. And then, well, once we read in this value, we want it to be read as an integer, right? That's the data type we're expecting. So here we put 2 or null. And again, we wanted to read in an integer, but if there was no integer to be read or I couldn't read the integer, it's just going to be set to a null value. Now, if it just so happens that there's no input that's submitted or for whatever reason can't read, it's just going to default to 0. Again, we don't want the app to crash. And we could just copy and do this for the second number. We're just gonna call it number 2. Now for this part, we don't have a very complicated calculator, and we want the user to be limited only to the options that we're gonna provide for them, right? So this is where we can use the when expression, right? So when the user submits this character, then we're gonna perform when the user submits, the plus sign or the plus symbol, we're going to perform the addition functionality. If the user submits minus, then we're going to minus these two numbers, right? So let's kind of like write that out in plain English. So basically, when the user selects plus, we add num1 and num2. When the user selects minus, we subtract. Right, so that's where we're going to use our when expression, right? So we're going to set our operator to be what the user selects, right? So we want to ask for input again. So we're going to set the to val operator is equal to, we're just going to set the to read line. Read line or no. And then we're gonna input our when statement. So then our val result, which is gonna be what we perform the actual math here, it's gonna be equal to, depending on the operator we select, so again, if operator is equal to plus then we're going to do num1 plus num2. And again, if they selected minus, it's going to be number 1 minus number 2. And then just to get rid of that error else, just going to put 0. All right, so let's try it out just to run these two, just to make sure that we're getting the right functionality. All right, so asking for our first number. So we did 12 plus 12 plus, and we didn't set a print statement, so let's do that here. We can do 22 plus 33. All right, so here we get your result is 55. So let's just finish it up. So first number, we're going to set 4, 4, want to multiply, and it says your result is 16. Nice. Now, we do need to fix this because we're saying that if anything other than these variables that were, anything other than these symbols are selected, then we end up just giving a 0, which would be inaccurate. But something else you can do in the else, while it is expecting, for the most part, a mathematical operation, which would result in an integer, and that would be safe to result. What you can do here is you could actually just tell it to perform a certain action and just get out of the when statement. So rather than just putting 0 here in brackets, we're going to tell it to print an error message. And then at the end, just return. So let's try that out. So we're just going to select our two numbers and we're going to select a letter. So again, on this one expression, rather than just bring out a 0 or an incorrect value, it just defaulted to this else branch and it just gave us an error. And after that, it completely, broke out from this one expression. So that's pretty much all of the, not all, but this is pretty much some of the important Kotlin basics. Again, I do feel that Kotlin is an easy enough language that you could pick up even if you didn't have a lot of programming experience. Again, you don't even need to install anything to get started on it. And if you look through, their website, they provide plenty of documentation, plenty of tutorials, plenty of things you could do. They have this Kotlin overview. They have this, what's new in Kotlin. They have all these, basics, all these little tutorials that you can do, they can work through. They have a YouTube channel. And I mean, right now, that's something that I think is becoming, fairly popular, because Kotlin at the end of the day is a very efficient language that you can use for backend projects. So I do think that if you went out of your way to learn something like this, not only would it be easy for you to learn, especially if you've already learned other programming languages, but it would also stand out in your resume. And I'm assuming the main goal is that, you don't want to just build projects for fun. You want to do something that's marketable, something that stands out from the other candidates, right? So I hope this was helpful to you. I hope you were able to get something out of this, and that you were able to see and understand how, just neat and concise Kotlin can be. Now, if you need any more help with any of this, if you need any questions setting this up, I do invite you to join my Discord. That's where I'll be doing some of these one-on-ones, answering questions, or just, giving ideas for projects, anything that you might need on your tech career journey. So I do thank you for watching. I hope you're able to, get something out of this, and good luck on your tech career.